Alrighty, we're back
Good evening.
with another blockbuster, chart-topping literature work of significance.
That's right. This is Straight Man by Richard Russo, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes, indeed. He won a Pulitzer Prize for Empire Falls. And this is one that's it's a little bit off the beaten track. It is called Straight Man. It's kind of a comedy. But I think a lot of his writing is rather comedic. But this is not about, coming of age as a young boy, right? Because I think most of his writing is like that. But this is about academic life in a state college, in a sort of second-rate state college.
Right. So how many parallels did you feel when reading this book with your own experience as a
Many. With the exception of being at all eligible for tenure, I felt it very strongly because I worked in not exactly not a second rate, but a state college, which is, second tier. And even during the time that I was working there was all of this talk about turning it into more or less a technical college. And there was that loss of, high ivory tower academia feeling on the campus. It never was a very ivory tower-ish kind of school, but really it was turning into much more of a technical college, emphasizing engineering and practical skills and business rather than, high academic pursuits. So I definitely felt it very much. And I went from that to a community college. And so that's where I could really empathize with the teacher's experience in the classroom. They were very similar caliber students, I would say.
Yes. So I thought sometimes they say it's you sound smart throwing around. This is the most autobiographical work of his literature oeuvre, if you will, but maybe, I don't know. Is Richard Russo an English teacher or anything, or does this
So many writers are English teachers, and so many writers write about being English majors or deciding on their major or writing their novel or that kind of thing. I don't know how autobiographical it is. I don't know very much about him, and I didn't look very much up because I wanted to sort of not tamper it. I know people love Richard Russo. I think I started Empire Falls, and there was just so little movement that, and I like plot, I like plot, and I like a story to move forward, that I got frustrated with it. And I felt the same way about this. But he's not about plot. He's not about plot at all.
I've read two of them. I've read Empire Falls, and I read Risk. No, I read Nobody's Fool, I think. That one I also read. And then a short story.
A short story. I think I read that Venice story you recommended to me.
Yeah, I don't even know.
And once again, there's no plot.
Yeah, it was very what the hell is this? And but so yeah, the title's called Straight Man, and the whole time so the title's called Straight Man, and he keeps referencing this Occam's razor thing, which I've also heard like smart-ish people on YouTube like to throw around, and I'm like, what even is that? And I Googled it many times while reading it. I'm like, okay, this is the time I'm going to find out who even cares about this. And then finally, yesterday, I found a explanation for it. Like, what is Occam's razor? Did you figure it out?
Yeah. So first of all, you're going to get screwed up with the word razor, right? Because it's sort of like it doesn't mean razor like we think shaving razor. Apparently, it means it's sort of more like a truth, or like Murphy's law. It's like that. Occam's law. It's like that, I think. And it just boils down to this: the simplest solution is usually the best one. That's all it is. And but he did kind of beat it to death in the beginning of the story. It seemed to me he kept his dog's name is Occam, and he was talking about it all the time. And I had a hard time finding exactly how it fit into the story, as I did with the title, Straight Man. I didn't quite understand. At one point he does say in the worst case scenario for any English professor would be to be the straight man. And that means you set up the joke for the funny man, right? And I had a hard time making sense of that as well. It's a pretty closed world he's talking about here. It's almost all in joke, and it's kind of even though I could understand a lot of that was going on and experienced many of the same things, and was familiar with English departments, I felt there's an inside joke here, and I'm not getting it. But that might be part of it. That might be part of the atmosphere.
Yeah. So the quote he says is, "In English departments, the most serious competition is for the role of straight man." And
oh, really?
So I was like, okay.
I misinterpreted that completely. I thought it was something different.
Yeah, he says he thinks he is the straight man in all these little universes he's pinballing off of in his little, where he would rather just be alone and look out at his deck at the Pennsylvania woods, I guess. And so finally yesterday, the Occam's razor, I had read that, it means the simplest thing is probably correct. And I'm like, well, that's absolutely not a useful thing to carry in your pocket. Why do people throw that around? That sounds totally stupid. Like, simplest is better. Like, tradition. We should do it because, we've been doing it. That's simple, right? Boom.
Well, no, that's a different concept. But I think that, don't overcomplicate things is not, it has some value.
Yeah, so the version that this YouTube finally said was how, back in the old days when this Occam guy was around, was people were focused on geocentric designs of the universe, where God made humans dominate the earth, we're the best, so it's reasonable that the earth is also the best in the universe, and everything revolves around the earth, because the sun and moon seem to go around us, But all these astronomers were like, yeah, but there's other stuff out there. There's stars and other planets that have regular cycles, but it doesn't make any sense for them to be around us, because when they meet, it's just the crazy patterns. You got to do all these cartwheels and somersaults to force it into this Earth-centric version. But of course, all the local people and religious people are like, yeah, but sun, moon, we get it. That's enough. And so finally, Copernicus was like, yeah, but if you have the sun as the center and we're all going around it at these different speeds, like the most center, Mercury spins around fastest, then, Mars, then Earth, and the more distant ones go around also, but more slowly. But when they do align, you could see, we're all in orbit around the sun. And so I think he was actually burned at the stake for his, that's not right. That doesn't go with God's plan. How does that make any sense? Like we're some minor character in the world, in the universe. And so I think that's what clarified that Occam's razor is like, don't twist yourself in knots to come to some, some solution you may or may not know you're biased towards.
Right. That makes a lot more sense. And again, it's context. Its context is that Occam's razor taken out of context. But if it truly did come around at the same time as sort of understanding the relationships in the universe, that makes a lot more sense. Because life is complicated. There are complications, but if you are twisting yourself into knots to try and maintain some kind of religious belief and power, by the way, then yeah, Occam's, the simplest solution is the best one.
Right. And so yeah, if that didn't enlighten you enough, perhaps I can lay this.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the straight man, like, what is the straight man? How would you?
A straight man, I would say, is the guy that sets up the jokes. It's like there used to be, great comedy teams, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. I grew up on them, and Dean Martin was the straight man. He said, "Well, what is this?" And then Jerry Lewis would say some joke and get all the laughs. He didn't get any of the laughs, the straight man. Mel Brooks is the comedy guy too. It was Carl Reiner was the straight man, was it? So it's the setup. It's the guy that does the setup on a comedy team, on a comedy routine.
Yeah, like I think of Jerry on Seinfeld. He's the straight man who. So he's there, and like Kramer is like the zany one, and George is like the always like
neurotic,
like scheming one to like, oh, maybe I can do this, and Elaine is always like complaining about something, and so he's in the middle where they all come together, and he has to listen to all this, and of course he's like, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? So all the zany people report to him, the straight man, and then as all their stories unfold, they return to him as either, oh, it worked out, or it didn't work out, and I learned nothing from it, and I'm still going to do it. But Jerry still, he can't be like us. Like, what do I hate this guy. Why am I even with this guy?
Uh-huh.
Because if we had a zany person, we would just delete them from our life.
Uh-huh.
So the straight man is also kind of screwed up because he does kind of encourage them along and says stuff like, yeah, this will probably work.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense too, because that fits Hank's position in the English department. It's like Mary Tyler Moore's show. Mary Tyler Moore was the straight man, and she had all these crazy people around her. It's like this book reminded me of the quirky English Village, where you got all these weirdos around, and there's one, and then this Hank guy in the center is the most sane, let's say.
Yeah, that's a thing too. Like to be a straight man, you can't just tell people like you're stupid and wrong. Like, what are you doing? Because then everybody will just shun you. Like nobody wants to be around you. So you have to like put up with it, and even for comedy, like kind of encourage it along a little bit for your own amusement or for the audience or something. So that's what this guy Hank.
You're absolutely right. Yeah,
that's what this Hank
You're
does.
Absolutely right.
He has to. Yeah. He has to exist in this university of these weirdos, each with their own agenda. And what's also ironic is he has this power, like he's the chair of the department for whatever reason. And he has to kind of encourage them that like, yeah, that your agenda may be good. But he'll never commit to his true feeling of like, you guys are all just like, we're all just washed up hacks, just like begging for scraps, still believing some kind of we're relevant in a bigger realm of academia and literature and artistic ability. Like even he also knows, he's like, yeah, I'm a hack too. Like I wrote a book, but who even cares? But yeah, if you go beyond the straight man and just be a total realist, like everybody would hate you and you'd be alone like all the time, I guess. So you have to put up with it to be a member of the tribe, I guess, of the clan. Joe,
you've totally enlightened me with this understanding of these characters. You've totally set the record. You've totally enlightened me and interpreted it for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So there we
have it. The Seinfeld analogy works perfectly. I never thought of that. Straight man.
It's funny also is that his wife, Lily, who's not that big a character, she's the straight man to his like zaniness that, he reports to her and she's just like, oh my God, why do you do, just try not to like go to jail and don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
He's like, all right. So everybody, it's just a never ending cycle of people like orbiting each other.
I think you're right. And I love that word orbit because in my notes, I'm starting to say he puts, he just has to deal with all these different people. This Hank, he has to deal with troublesome students, his daughter, the faculty, as well. He doesn't have any problem with his wife, but he has to deal with them. But then I crossed out deal with, because he doesn't resolve anything. He just has to interact with them. And I think you're right. They are just in, orbits that bump into each other every once in a while. The only time I really saw him do something good was with the son-in-law, when his daughter left her husband and was so upset, and the son-in-law came over and he gave him some real, genuine, valuable guidance when he said, you need to go talk to her, because he needs to get the picture of her falling down out of his mind, so he doesn't think he's guilty of abuse, or he needs to get past that. And he needs to take that other job. And that was the only time I really saw any, the word that's current now, agency, in him. Otherwise, he's just a drifter, just drifting, and things just sort of happen.
Yeah, that's kind of that's I think his thing. He's not he's always kind of hung around. So yeah, he's a guy, he's like 50 or something.
Mm-hmm.
He has 2 daughters. They've moved away, and he's kind of he works, but he's in this kind of semi-retired chapter where he wants to live alone on this street that's got amazing forest view, and he's got a dog, and he doesn't like that people are moving near him. He doesn't like that his daughter copied his house style exactly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so he wants like solitude, but of course his actions are he's still totally involved, and does care about things, but just can't find like the motivation to like do anything. So he's got coworkers who are all I guess the main thing is that his job is the English teacher, but he's also temporary chair of the department, but he's not actually effective, or he doesn't want to do anything, which what they all think is the job of the head is to like, oh, we should be trying to improve things. But he's kind of like, I'm for the sake of harmony, I'm just going to try to do nothing. But his real feeling is that we really do need to cut some of these people, because some of them are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And the bosses are saying that this cut is coming, and that honestly wouldn't be such a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he does care about his colleagues on like a human level. And so that's kind of the main thing. People want him to decide, are you with us or what? Like, are you going to try to jam up that they can't cut us? We've got tenure. There's a contract. Like they think they can cut us, but really they legally can't,
mm-hmm.
kind of thing. But I think Hank is like, and I'm kind of like this too. I'm like, they can do whatever they want. Like legally, people, if they do it, they're literally testing you. Are you really willing to go through the legal rigmarole to fight back?
Right.
Most people would just move on.
Right.
Like, this isn't what I want to do. So then when an organization knows that, they will just, regardless of a contract, they'll say, yeah, you're all performance issues, you're all cut.
So they'll find some other way. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Hank is kind of with that. He knows that's how the system is. So all these colleagues are spinning their wheels trying to get him to, join them and fight. But he's like, not only do I think it's hopeless, but that probably you should be cut, but that, I kind of think you should be cut too.
Yeah, I think that he's a man past illusions. He doesn't have any illusions and no delusions of grandeur. He likes to goad, and in order to be a goader, you have to sort of be you have to kind of be on the periphery. But if you're in the middle of it, you're going to get hit with a spiral notebook and get your nose ripped up. So, that happens to him too. I think you're right that he does care. He does care about his daughter, and he loves his wife, and he cares about these people that he's shared, who've been colleagues for, 20 years or so. And he doesn't have any illusions about where he is and where they are and what the university or college can do to them. Because all they have to do is reorganize. All they have to do is say the legislature didn't come through with, the budget. We don't have any choice. And in fact, because it all circles around this list. Make a list of people that are expendable. Make a list of people that should be cut. But what I thought was so fascinating was that I don't know who it was. I guess it was the dean. I was looking at the chain of command up to the chancellor. He said, "Don't give me a list of people. Just give me a list of criteria, and then we'll figure out who doesn't fit the criteria." So then, everybody is able to wash their hands. It's so fascinating that what people do to each other and how they're able to do it.
Yeah, it is. I thought this was pretty good. And once that whole straight man and Occam's razor thing became clear, I was like, oh, this is kind of like a exploration, and everything is feudal. Humans, the dilemma, we think we have power, but really we're powerless like so much of the time. And in that is ironic humor, where we're like, you just can't help but laugh at just how, we do have power, but we don't at the same time.
Right. Exactly right.
And so what can we even do?
I might have to read it again with that, because really putting that Seinfeld perspective on this novel changes everything, because I never got below the surface. I never got what his motivation is. What is he doing, and what is he doing? I didn't know what he was doing except dodging phone calls and being absent from the office, not meeting his responsibilities, any responsibilities, even though he's being pulled in every direction. What does he want to do? What does he do? And what is his motivation? I could never get any depth. I never saw any depth in any of the characters. So I can't really say this is about characterization, because there's no depth. But putting the Seinfeld, analogy on it helps tremendously, as does the astronomical aspect of Occam's razor. That's that context really enriches the story a great deal. It makes me wonder who he's writing this book for, because I consider myself pretty educated, but I didn't get that depth. And you had to do some research to get it, right?
Well, I read some terrible explanations. Yeah, like a similar Occam's razor, whatever simplest explanation's probably it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
like,
how
what
does
do you
this
mean?
fit? Well, I can.
But it's that internal bias that I want this, so I will bend over backwards to explain it, to rationalize it with as many hoops I need to jump through to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems worthwhile, because you may or may not realize you're being drawn to that result.
Mm-hmm.
Hank has to observe all these people. He's got someone who's like super politically correct, some staff member who's thinking he's on the cutting edge of the current fad of like total equality.
Yeah, or she.
Everything needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that person who's like kind of a hippie, and he like laughs at him that like, you think this agenda will save you, but like, you're a terrible teacher or something, or you're just boring. And then he's got his his enemy, this guy Rourke, who is hostile to him, and he has like a fast car, like young wife, and but Hank likes to talk about how he lives in my neighborhood, but on the wrong side of the street, which is prone to mudslides and rot, and so the property is the same, but just that subtle difference of a 50-50 chance. He likes to present this identity of success and I look what I have, but he's deeply like probably not happy,
Right.
as is really revealed later on.
Right.
And is Hank even happy? It's kind of funny too. I thought about like even Socrates too. Like is he happy in his knowledge of his wisdom over all these people that he has to like manage and like guard against, and people come at him and he has to like deflect them away. Like he knows it's all pointless, but he has to kind of slightly encourage them. Yeah, well, if you think that's what you should do, maybe you should do that. I don't know what, maybe. Yeah. I would if I were you, maybe. And like, but yeah, in the end, Socrates, he was hardline, like, no, this is it. You're all wrong. And they killed him for it. And Copernicus too, who said that, the Earth goes around the sun, not the other way. And they burned him at the stake for it. So he's not that hardcore. But he also likes the humor of, he knows what people want. And then as he doesn't give it to them or seems like he likes to read their face, whether he's joking or not. Like, that's funny to him, which I think is funny, which I kind of do. So he's kind of he has a kind of high view of things, but he is washed up and has responsibilities and he does have empathy for his colleagues, but knows most stuff is like futile in the end, I guess.
Yes. Wow, you really nailed it, Joe, and you've really improved my understanding of the book completely and totally, because I made notes. I've got this and that I could say, but really, I think that you have a much better and deeper understanding of this man than I do.
Well, I liked his other books too. I thought about Empire Falls. The title of that one is Empire Falls, and that one's also about a regular guy who like works at a restaurant and he's like divorced and has kids who are whatever, don't respect him. But for whatever reason, the old matriarch of the region likes him or appreciates his judgment on things, or for some reason. And in the end, she tries to pressure him, or he's put in a tight spot too, but he like navigates it just from his decency and kind of cleverness, I guess. And then in the end, yeah, the woman like goes down or gets what, or yeah, just, he wins. And like, oh, is that the empire that falls is like because I don't know, that old, he kind of wins against this wealthy other enemy or something.
Interesting. I think that, the first chapter, one of the first things he says, and he's the narrator, first person narrator, most people want to be comforted, he says, but he doesn't comfort anybody. Nobody gets it. He recognizes, so that fits in with your analysis of him. He recognizes what people want or need, but he doesn't give it to them.
Yeah. He,
and I guess you consider that funny. I kind of consider it mean. I was waiting for him to comfort somebody. He also says throughout the first part of the book, I'm not a something, I'm not this kind of person, but I can play that role. And he constantly is playing the role. And that fits Seinfeld. That fits also your analysis of saying, yeah, you might want to do that if, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he also, like Larry David's other show, he's just like satirizes all these pretty heavy topics for other people. Like, again, the coworkers, like, we need to band together. And he's like, do we? And then he's got this hardline security guard guy who's way too serious about his job. Like, we need to find this. And he's like, well, good luck with that. And he just has to make light of all these insignificant battles everybody is trying to win against. And so, kind of like Larry on Curb, he just walks through life poking out how don't you see how ridiculously you look, spinning your wheels at, if change is coming, like, what are you going to, what really can you do about it?
I think the strongest, I found two strong metaphors, I thought, in the book. When the first one was that one that's sliding down the icy road. And I think that that's a metaphor. It suits his own metaphor that, these guys are all past their prime and just, over their hump, and they've given up their dreams. They're just scrambling for what they can get in their small little area, which leads to the second metaphor, which is the duck pond, the geese pond, the geese at the pond on the campus. And that is, he says, the geese are so settled they don't even migrate anymore. They're just too lazy. And that's exactly suits this faculty completely.
Yeah. he even talks about early on. There's a guy who committed suicide by just laying on the train tracks, and
Yes.
he
Yes.
reflects on that as like, yeah, there's that. That's also not a thing to be feared. Like that's a thing to do. Like he's so just seasoned or jaded
Jaded.
that he's like, it can all be thought about. Everything is fair
Yeah.
game.
Because that's a serious topic. And his name was Cherry, the guy that committed suicide on the train tracks in this Rust Belt town where, railroad's not important anymore. And choosing that has been vehicle for your for your suicide. Suicide's a serious, serious thing. He mentions it more than once.
Yeah, I guess that guy William Cherry, he won his retirement or some kind of battle to get to be, hey, you did it. You got your retirement. Now you can like relax. But he chose to lay on the tracks. And Hank says, I can't help wondering if William Cherry also feared things would work out if he didn't do something drastic to prevent them. So like like in most people's minds, retirement and security, that's it. You did it. But Hank also is like, maybe we're the same. They're like, well, it doesn't, who cares? That's really what, just to get old and, live with your stuff or something?
Well, I think do you think that it's a fear? I don't want to put it in just little pop psychology terms, but do you think it's like a fear of success? If you do make it right, then what? Right? Or, will you get slapped down?
I think I think it's a fear of like, once you get the thing you want, you will be disappointed. And like, once you achieve that thing, he knows like the disappointment is there.
Oh, okay.
That's why he like placates all these neighbors he has, because he was a writer. He did it. He's published. That should be a good thing. His father was a published writer.
Well, the father finally gets the primo position at Columbia, and then he can't lecture. That illustrates that point exactly, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing you want, he knows disappointment is inevitably there, and so he's like, yeah, maybe suicide. That could, that could be good.
Yeah. So explain the urine thing. He doesn't have necessarily prostate problems. He doesn't have cancer like he thinks he has. He just has backed up urine. He's not able to pee. So is this just diminished output? What is this? What is this metaphor?
This also goes back to Seinfeld, because you can't eventually straight man dynamic. Eventually, some of the funniest things are when the straight man actually joins in and the craziness, or like they get sucked in. And so there is kind of debate about season Seinfeld 8 and 9, where that's where Larry left and Jerry became the main writer. And suddenly Jerry is doing these things that are so not what he would normally do. He starts hanging out with Kramer, and he starts working with Newman, becoming a postman, and it's like Jerry would never do this in the past seasons. So that's what I thought of when finally Hank he like can't go to the bathroom, and suddenly he like falls asleep, and then he's having a dream about something, and then he wakes up and his pants are all wet, and it's when everybody's looking for him because everybody wants to oust him out of his leadership role. So he hides up in the ceiling and gets dirty and has to like make his escape. So that's what I thought was like he in a straight man thing, eventually he has a crazy episode of his own. That we're like, oh, and that's like, oh my God, now you're in it. So what are you going to do?
And now the whole world, we don't have our anchor anymore. We don't have our sticking point to keep the reader sane. Now, if you go crazy too, then who are we going to believe?
Yeah. And his dad, that could be why he's so like just, unmotivated, because he became like he doesn't like his dad, but he followed his job and is estranged from him. And he left with a cliche young student and ditched their family. So Uh, and then there's trauma revealed later. Like he was like fooling around with a rope on the ceiling, and honestly, I don't think we know if he was thinking about like hanging himself because he was depressed as a boy or something. But it's written that he's playing with a rope for whatever reason, and his mom sees him with it, and then the mom must think, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And her only reaction is like, "Let's just forget about this. Let's never
We'll never speak of it
speak of this
again.
again." And so maybe that's where we get a glimpse into Hank's deep-seated, repressed memory he forgot about, but then remembers. But then the mom says, "Don't remember this." That I think maybe he was like depressed then,
Oh
and then he's
yeah.
like still depressed,
Oh, I think
and
so.
that's why he's so like cynical, and you know is just plays into sees the humor in everybody's motivations or wills towards trying to improve their own lives.
Yeah. He he's kind of an insider and an outsider at the same time, because he has the prestige, even though it's temporary, of the chairmanship, even though there's no, I don't understand why they want to, maybe they just want to oust him because he will not, be clear and commit, but they also think he's mishandled things, and there's no evidence of that. Maybe the reader just has to take that and believe it. But so he has that position of, good position, and his home is in a good position. He's on the top of the hill. He cut the trees down, so he had this great view. He refused to sell property to this Rourke, which is why there's this animosity between them. And he's just kind of sitting pretty where he is. It's a nice house. It was, custom design, I guess. But the fact is that it's in a second-rate university and a Rust Belt town. Nobody's going anywhere. He's just sort of sitting as king of the hill on the way down, sliding down that icy hill.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, yeah, it talks about Pennsylvania. Like, it's so funny because like Philly is part of the East Coast, but once you get away from the river and the coast, it's like I've heard that before. Something where like, oh, the train is the technology that will connect us to the dynamism of commerce and culture of the coast and cities. But yeah, that is true. But then eventually, yeah, water and rivers and coast still reign. Like shipping is still the main thing. So there's like railroad graveyards or like train yards that are just like, it just means like dead and dying regions where there's no activity happening. So yeah, he sees that all around. Like we're all kind of sliding down, and he's the only one who kind of knows it. Maybe everybody else is trying to like bring back to life or put some life into something, but he's like, this is all just.
Oh, I don't think that. I think they all know as well. I mean, especially Rourke, he knows also, but they're mad about it instead of kind of laughing about it or taking it with a grain of salt. I think they're angry and disappointed, and they're, new to disillusionment. And maybe his disillusionment happened when he was a kid, when his father left him, and he's got this cynical viewpoint for longer. I think they're all angry and trying to come to terms with that anger. But he's just sort of internalized everything for a much longer period of time. The railroad is an interesting element in the story because all this infrastructure was built up around this mechanized, moving, there's more than just a process. It's, the building of the railroad was just huge, but it was short-lived. It's sort of like the Pony Express. The Pony Express was, they were the fastest horses everywhere, but then they were pretty soon overtaken by the railroad. And then the railroads have been overtaken by the highway system and flying. So, but the horses, they can go out to pasture, but the railroad, that's just left there to rust. And these huge rail yards, they're still graveyards. They're quite visible and just unproductive. And, it's sort of like these old faculty members sitting around and not doing anything. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I think he does that too in the Empire Falls. Like the train is always like this like used to be, has been symbol of like, oh yeah, it used to be something, now it's dead.
Yeah. And just the skeleton remains and it's sitting there as an eyesore. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's disillusioned and yeah, like you're saying, everybody wants to fight. That becomes, that's where they see their validity. Like,
yes.
Oh, as long as we fight, like never give up.
Yes.
And that's more typical American. Like we fight, that's what we do. And but Hank's like, do we? Like, why not just who cares? And that's kind of funny. I saw, again, going to Larry David, like Larry would say that his parents would say like, don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because they escaped from Germany and their family was like wiped out. And he's like, we'll just, don't expect much.
Yeah.
Of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a lot of comedians, Jewish comedians talk about that, where the trauma of their parents was passed down to them of like, why don't you just Larry's mom wanted him to be a mailman. He thought that would be, you just walk your route, give the mail, get your check. That's good enough.
That's good enough.
Okay.
Keep your head down and just keep plodding along. Yeah. And they're all going to write, yeah, that might be particularly American, especially English majors. They study literature. That's what they study. They don't study the technical aspect of how to write. That's a much, much, much later development and necessary skill to know how to teach, because students coming up into college are not good writers. Well, more on that later, but they just studied literature and poetry. And so they've got these highfalutin ideas about what an English teacher is. And, really nothing. You just have to try and teach somebody what a sentence is.
Yeah. Another thing I remembered is that, his dad is this legendary figure, teaches one class at Columbia or whatever, just so they can say we have this, and his topic is just like shitting on Dickens.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, even I know that I think Dickens' main contribution was just kind of writing about trying to create empathy for these super like hard time characters, and to look at people who like, wow, they've got, everybody has their own hard life and hard family, hard circumstances. And so I think that's where, his dad is just like, has no empathy, just ditched his family, and look where it got him. Now he's just like a weeping, crying garbage. For some reason, his mom still cares about him.
Well, because her success depends on him. Yeah, it hurts. He's not very good with he's very. I understood the men much better in this story than I did the women. The women are very much secondary and subservient sort of positions: wife, secretary, daughter, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so, but that's why his mother sticks to the father, because her stature comes from him. And so even if he's broken down and useless now, still it's a poor thing, but mine own sort of thing. And so that's why I think that's why she hangs on to him.
I think another zany character he runs into is that like the landlord who has like a huge truck and likes cowboy boots and stuff, who's just the opposite type for his mom. And he kind of placates him like, she might like it if you play her some of your country music. And of course he knows she wants like nothing. She is like exploiting him for rides and favors and stuff. But Hank still no, you might have a chance if you did that. He just likes to see.
Yeah, he doesn't discourage him, but I think the cowboy guy or the farmer, he knows he doesn't have a chance. But he kind of enjoys the pursuit. And I think that maybe he's a good he's a good cipher for Hank, because I think Hank kind of enjoys what he does, not manipulating, but sort of manipulating all these balls in the air, keep juggling all these zany characters around him. And he knows nobody's going to go anywhere. He knows he's not going to write another novel, but he kind of enjoys the life he has, I think.
Well, that's another thing I remember. So another thing about the straight man that if we had these Kramers in our lives, we would want to get rid of them, but maybe we wouldn't, because deep down we kind of wish we could be like that.
Yeah.
I remember when I was like, maybe something this, maybe I could try this.
Yes.
And there's a passage where he does feel jealous, where his assistant wins a writing contract, and he's like, I remember when I used to think something good might happen.
Yeah, when this is the most important day of her life. Yeah, that's true. And not only do we remember ourselves as that, but we have to sort of be jealous of the freedom to act that way that Kramer has, and some of these like the guy that he sits in the hot tub with. Why is he friends with this guy? Why does he play handball with this guy or racquetball and let him win? And, this guy makes all these crazy rules where he can't step 1 foot left or right. But he must enjoy it. He must envy the freedom to just lay down those kinds of crazy rules and do what he wants and have who he wants in his hot tub. And he's just kind of watching the show.
You mean the guy Tony?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that guy also waxes philosophizes about stuff about, you see how it is. He's like this elder statesman to Hank, and tries to rationalize, like Occam would say, don't do this. How you see what I have is exactly what I want, and this is the exact circumstance that, and you see this is why. Everybody, if they just did like I did. And then meanwhile, he does have this chaotic meteor crash into his life that he actually, a woman or student went a little bit crazy and said he was sexual misconduct with me. And because Tony's brand is that, nobody believes him. And so as much as that guy, again, tries to manage or construct this situation, it's still random chaos can just come in. Teddy and the other teachers we're trying to construct, we have tenure, we're labor, you should be with us. It's but they have the money, they're the bosses, what are you going to do? So it reminded me of that in The Dark Knight when the Joker says, you got these schemers, everybody's trying to scheme their little world, and I like to just blow it all up and show them how all their plans are meaningless.
Yeah, because your meteor metaphor is pretty good. Those things happen. And what's really annoying, what really annoyed me about this book is he comes out smelling like a rose. All of a sudden, this grant that he and his wife, his favorite person in the world that he would like to work with, this grant comes through, and he's going to be able to pursue that in a technical sense. And it's the technical aspect of an English teacher, how to write, not the pursuit of poetry or writing, because all those pursuits are garbage. Gracie's not a good poet. Who is our poet again? And that kid that tries to write the short stories, it's crap, right? But what Grant comes through at the end, the technical aspect of English, how to write, how to better prepare students for writing.
Yeah, and I think that he does have a little awakening at the end, and it's because his poor dog Occam gets totally wiped out by another teacher. So his dog's name is Occam. Occam's dead, which means he is not so cynical anymore. He's gonna maybe lean into the wind a little bit and actually be a little bit optimistic. And so that's where he, Russell, the son-in-law, comes back. He wants to be involved more. He gets his own writing deal, I think, and he gets offered to become dean of the school or something.
Yeah, dean. That's a promotion up from. So that's the musical chairs that goes on. You put him up to dean, which he considers. He considers as a possibility.
Yeah, and he doesn't do it. Because I think he does know. I think that's the purpose of seeing his students throughout. How like these kids are just useless. Like they're too. It's just I don't know. That might be Richard Russo's comment that like academia just can't compete with all the media and that they're consuming that rivals education. I don't know.
Well, and they're trying to teach the old form of English major or English classes, studying creative writing or studying poetry or, Shakespeare. Forget about it. Teach a kid how to read and write a paragraph. That's what they need. It's the old school aspect. English departments, they're all dying. They're all moribund. It is the technical skills that are needed and wanted now.
Yeah, I think he throws his daughter into that basket too, who he can't understand how she's having this trouble, but she's constantly calling people and can't just like reflect on it. She was never like a reader. She doesn't know how to just be with herself or something. So these kids these days, they're just all about nonstop stimulation and not actual reflection or something.
Well, what I saw was, English departments nowadays, they're primarily teaching incoming freshmen how to write an essay and how to organize thoughts and that kind of thing. It's a very technical skill. And a lot of English teachers don't know how to teach that. They're English majors because they're good at it, because it comes easy to them. They're not necessarily very good technical teachers of technical skills in how to write. They can wax poetic about literature a little bit, sort of like the guy's father. It's easy to, criticize a lion of the English canon, but it's very difficult to teach somebody how to do something that comes easy for you. That's a difference in old English departments and new English departments. And that's the movement toward the technical skills as a result.
I also wondered if why did he reject the dean? I think that was like, I think maybe I thought it was that he realized, academia, we're told we're helping. We want to believe we're helping, but he's like, I don't think we are.
Not English departments, not Shakespeare classes and not poetry classes. No, you're not.
And so that's why he went to his like, yes, I guess he's going to be a writer. He's like, now I'm getting back into the trenches.
Well, he's going to do two things. He's going to he's a storyteller. He'll be a storyteller writing these bits that he's done in the local paper, right? Then the stories about his father mostly. So that's that path of the writing path. But really, they're just simple narratives. And two, he and his wife are going to get paid to analyze. I think I'm not exactly sure what the terminology was, but to analyze how to help incoming students that don't know how to write. And that's, basic skills. Every college campus and community college campus is doing that, or was doing it when I was teaching anyway. How to bring kids graduating from high school up to college level writing. And it's usually an entire year process, if not two.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, like we use literature and material to see the relationships between things, but then the other way, like, how about you try to do it to me?
Mm-hmm.
If you can do it to me, then maybe you will then see somebody else doing it. Oh, I know that because I can do that too. So that is kind of a step ahead. If you don't know how to write, if you don't know how to communicate, how can you know how to be communicated to? How do you know how to interpret something?
You can't. You just think. So, like, I would ask students reading just a short story. Now, why is this character all dressed in black, for instance? Something simple like that. Well, that's just he likes black. They'd say. I said, no, it's not just he likes black. The author made a decision to dress him. What's the author trying to say to you? What's the communication that's going on here? But they just. Well, that's another whole topic about what I think, tolerance to the detriment of all judgment has been um, has been diminished.
Mm.
But that's another whole thing.
And what do you think of the ending? So the ending is they're all at Tony's house because he had heart trouble and got out of the hospital, I guess. And they're all in this room, and someone says, "Hey, we're trapped like rats."
Yeah.
And they're all laughing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so like, what does that mean?
Well, they're like the geese in the pond. They're like the faculty at this college that is dying. They are trapped there. They've got so much time and money invested in it, wives and divorces and everything else. They can't leave. They, maybe I'll take that opportunity. Well, it's too bad. Too late, baby. That ship has passed. You've locked yourself in this room with these people. And now you just have to either fight it out or cooperate and figure out how to open the door without hurting anybody. I think that's a perfect metaphor.
Yeah, I thought it was that Hank was always like narrating himself in the third person, which is so like annoying. He's like, well, that's not what Henry would do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the end, he brings his son-in-law back. He's with his people, and he's kind of become like a tribesman, like, I'm with you guys, and we're all just screwed.
Yes.
But it's, I know we're screwed, and he sees his enemy, and his enemy sees how, like, look at this, like, how funny is this? Or, we've been this stupid pseudo at war for so long. It's like, we're just ridiculous. How ridiculous is this?
Yes.
And so then he sees there are all these academics who are supposed to be enlightened minds, but they can't figure out how to get out of this room because there are too many people in it.
Right.
And Hank is in there too.
Yes.
So he's kind of embraced that, though he sees that, everyone is screwed, but we're all in it together. So.
That's right. Because he's still there too. He's still in that universe. He's still at that college. And he's just as trapped as they are. He's not going anywhere. He's not, that's what you work up, improve, and get tenure. And then you just sit on your fat ass and you don't do anything. And that's exactly where he is too. He's just as trapped as they are. They're all trapped together. And they did it to themselves.
Yeah. It's also funny. He observes his colleagues all trading wives and dating each other. He's like, this is, come on. He's getting heckled by his friend. You don't love your wife enough.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, really? You think so? Like, how it's like you're still looking for like something is going to improve your life so much. Like that's why he's so dry. Like, can't you see you're screwed? I mean, at least I know I'm screwed. You don't even know it.
And he's probably the least screwed of all of them because he has a little bit clearer vision. The other thing is that they're only friends due to inertia. I mean, they're friends. They're not really friends. They don't like each other. They're just colleagues, but there's no collegiality. They're just, trapped in the same room with each other, and they interact with each other. But, Rourke gives up his feud just because, well, he got to be chair. He got some reward, and you might as well, you got to stop fighting sometime. So they're not, he calls them friends, but really they're just associates. They're just, associates for the past 20 or 30 years.
I thought also, like, Hank does want to be with people. Like, he talks about his solitude at his house, and he's like, oh, my dog is my best friend. But he does like to be, because he always keeps talking about his basketball, playing with people, playing baseball.
He does a lot of team stuff. Yep.
If that was changed to like, oh, I was fishing, or he does say I was jogging, but then that gets pretty much forgotten about with all this like team stuff he does. So he's just a type who, because if the story was like, I love hiking, everyday hiking, and then you're just like, okay, well, this guy should just, why does
or
should
writer,
just not care about anybody.
Writer. That's a solitary pursuit too. But no, he's not. He's a teacher, and he teaches 2 classes, and he's the chair of the department. So he's got to interact with these groups. So yeah, he is a social person.
Yeah. The trapped like rats thing also reminded me of that satire, Jewish satire, where like when you're just, of course, in the most extreme case, when you're just so screwed, like you can't help but just, you have to laugh.
Yes.
Or even like black African American comedy when you're like, just things are just so bad. You have to just make light of how terrible something is, because it's the only way to survive. Otherwise you go full pessimist, and then maybe lay on the train tracks.
And you'd lay on the train tracks, is right. I'll tell you what, Joe, you really have given me a much better appreciation of this book. Again, I can't say enough, because I kind of came away from it. I don't get it. I don't think I like this guy. There's no plot here. Nothing is moving forward. Although this does have plot. I mean, it does move forward, but there's just, I just kind of didn't get it. But I think you've really enriched my experience of it. I have to say, really, I'm shocked.
Well, I don't get the significance of the weird student who writes about like crazy stories. I'm like, what's he going to do with this? And that kind of went nowhere.
Because the student's going to go nowhere. So what do you do with somebody that's that misguided? Somebody said to me, I think it was Anne said once, you have to be very, very specific. In this sentence, don't use this word, or in this scene, don't use that explanation. He can't quite discourage him. He's, he doesn't discourage anybody, right? But, the world is going to come crashing down, but he can't be part of it. The kid has to reach that by himself.
Yeah. I thought that the duck thing was part of this Jerry's thing, like joining the zaniness. Like he's like, that's just what happens to the straight man sometimes. I thought that, when the dog dies, it meant that he's changed to no more of this, like, kind of pessimistic, like he wants to be biased towards that, like, hey, maybe I can do something. Maybe I still got something in me, even though I probably don't.
No.
But maybe I do.
There's no epiphany in this at all. And that's why, it's not plot driven. Because there's no breaking point where something has to change, or the situation or the character has to change. None of that happens. You just keep going. They just keep going on and eventually lock themselves in a room.
Yeah, I kind of like that, how he didn't just hand it to you. He's like, then I knew, like, I blah, blah, blah.
No, yeah.
He just says, like, this is what happened when I got out of the hospital. He says to his dad, you feel guilty about how you treated Dickens, like, which means, like, you're a fucking asshole.
Yeah,
like, you only now realize you didn't have empathy. You thought Dickens maybe is good. It's like, what the hell about us?
Well, yeah, what about us? Yeah, that's the main thing, I think. Who cares about Dickens? Dickens will go along without you, but what about us? Yeah.
Yeah, and he writes, like, and then when my dad died, I didn't really care.
No, that ship has sailed.
That was also very Larry David-ish, because he'll put in his episodes about how, like, he says, like, when his mom died or something, he's like, people call him. He's like, you know what? And that thing you invite me to, I can't. You know what? I just got to be alone for a while. So he's using it to get out of things that everyone thinks, like, oh, of course, yeah, you don't have to come. He's like, oh, great.
Yeah, I think that actually that's more honest, because I don't think that people have great revelations or changes in character.
Yeah,
he did.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then my life changed. He's just like, nope, I'm still just where I'm at, but I kind of think something now, which before I was very Occam's razor, like, it's probably not that.
Yeah, because that does fade. It's not. It's in the first part of the book, but not the second half. Absolutely. I might read it again. Golly.
I guess the straight man is kind of dry and pretty, like, like, what do you, like, doubtful. Now he's maybe not the straight man. He's joined. He's like, I want to be a character again.
Well, the thing is, at the beginning of the book, he never takes anything seriously, ever. He's always joking. Who's our poet again? Who is our poet? And even when his wife leaves him, he makes a joke. I forget what it was, but there's always an opportunity. He takes it and he makes the joke. That's why I couldn't get why he would be called the straight man, because the straight man is the one that sets up the joke, at least in my generation. But saying telling me about Seinfeld, and then I can think about Mary Tyler Moore. That makes it a little bit clearer and more understandable for me.
Yeah, also like Jim on The Office, he's the straight man. Like he's there with Michael and Dwight, and he has to be like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" But he does encourage them a little bit. He wants to be with them. Like he doesn't quit The Office. He's still there, and he actually does like it. It's just his role is to kind of hear what it is and be like, "Oh, why would you do that?" But show it the way forward.
But isn't he sort of in cahoots with the audience? Isn't he supposed to be the one, that
he's
wink, wink.
amused by it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's also he's amused by it too. Like so, and then there's episodes too where Jim joins in on it, and it is kind of funny because it's unusual that he gets sucked into it. But then it goes on. That show goes on too long, and Jim becomes like too zany, and you're like, no, this is like now like somebody else has to be the straight man. And you're like, this is just like now everybody's just changing roles.
Well, that's kind of interesting. Well, that's what happens at the end of Straight Man. Everybody changes roles. New chair. The dean is promoted to president, and the guy at the top that thought he was invulnerable, he's out. He gets fired. So maybe that is. So with sitcoms, they do run their course, and then it's like, how much further can we go here? The situation has changed so much that it's not tenable anymore. So that kind of happens here. Everybody changes their positions. They're stuck in the room together, but he does sell the land that he was holding out on for so long. And that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I liked it. But it took me many tries to find out what does Occam's razor even mean, like 3 or 4 times. Like what? And finally I found like a good version.
Well, I think you found the context in which that philosophy was developed, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Because the simplest solution is usually right is oversimplified. It's oversimplified.
So that's gonna do it for.
Now I think we can close it for today. You're gonna run some music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, we got to think about the next book, and so you chose this one, and it looks like playtime is over. Time to I'll give you 2 choices. Time to put our helmets on. We can do Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. Okay. What's your reaction to that?
I am troubled. Go ahead.
Or I'll give you this other option. We can do Born Standing Up by Steve Martin, his autobiography.
Born Standing Up.
Yep. You can either choose to do some real work or have another piece of candy.
Well, you want to dive into this Aristotle, don't you? And I never studied philosophy, and that's kind of going to be a tough haul for me. And in January, I start another short story session.
Sounds like
I'm leaning toward
Aristotle it is.
Shoot. Okay, is this...
I recommend just get the Penguin one. The Penguin one intro will teach you what it is, and
I won't have to read any further.
Go to YouTube.
Thank God. And then, how do you spell this?
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to spell on the podcast. So anyway...
No spelling on the podcast.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was one of the rules.
Time. No, listeners don't want to hear spelling. So we will catch you next time on, what is it? Book Talk Pod? Tog Pot? Talk?
That's close enough.
All right. See you next time.
Bye-bye.